The day they sealed my cabin gate with concrete was the day they sealed their own fate. At 6 a.m. that September morning, Delilah Peton stood in her designer yoga pants and white BMW glow, directing a crew of workers as they poured thick gray slurry completely around my gate posts. The barriers rose fast, solid, unyielding, and final. She slapped a notice on the fresh concrete, $500 daily fine if I attempted to break through. Her smirk said she thought she'd finally won the long, petty war she'd been waging against me and my aesthetically incompatible iron gate. What she didn't realize, what none of the 47 families in Pine View Estates realized, was that by locking me out, she had just locked everyone else in. Their entire development had only one road connecting to Highway 12. Every foot of that gravel lane ran across my private land. 3 months later, she would be begging me not to leave them stranded forever. But right then, she believed she was untouchable. My name is Marcus Brennan. 6 months before the concrete trucks rolled in, I still believed the worst thing that could ever happen to me was losing my wife, Sarah, to lung cancer. Then I met my new neighbor. I inherited 40 acres of Montana wilderness from my grandfather, including the rustic cabin where I'd spent childhood summers listening to tires crunch over that same private gravel road. In 2019, developers built Pine View Estates around my property. 47 McMansions sold as luxury mountain living with convenient highway access. The brochures never mentioned that the convenient access belonged to me. The original developers had enjoyed a handshake understanding with my grandfather. Handshakes aren't deeds. When they sold out, the new HOA simply assumed the road was theirs. For 4 quiet years nobody questioned it. Then Delilah Peton bought the biggest house on the ridge. At 49, she embodied every stereotype of suburban entitlement I'd ever tried to avoid: condescending smile, clipboard always in hand, the unshakable conviction that the world should bend to her vision of elevated community standards. Within 6 months, she was HOA president. She first appeared in my driveway 14 days after her coronation, declaring my 1987 iron gate an eyesore that threatened property values. "We need cohesive design elements," she announced, tapping manicured nails on her clipboard. "Something more upscale. The HOA has pre-approved contractors." I explained, politely, that my gate sat on private land outside their jurisdiction. Her eyes went cold even as her smile stayed fixed. "Oh, sweetie, geography creates mutual responsibilities. We'll work this out." 2 weeks later, a county inspector arrived investigating illegal structures and environmental violations. Someone had filed a complaint. The inspector found nothing. The message, however, was received. At the next HOA meeting, whispers spread that I was difficult, potentially unstable, a veteran who struggled with authority. Newer residents avoided eye contact. They'd already bought Delilah's narrative, the crazy hermit jeopardizing their investment. 20 years as an Army Corps engineer had taught me how to recognize petty tyrants. They mistake volume for power and assume everyone else lacks spine. Delilah was textbook. The real escalation came one cicada-thick September evening. She knocked on my cabin door, clipboard in hand, demanding I attend mandatory community meetings to discuss my compliance obligations. I reminded her I wasn't an HOA member and my property wasn't subject to their rules. She laughed. "Geographic proximity creates legal obligations, Marcus. Your little hermit act ends now." When I refused, she filed another county complaint claiming my road access violated mysterious existing easements. Pure fiction. Harassment dressed as paperwork. That night, surrounded by the scent of pine needles and the lavender candles Sarah used to burn, I opened grandfather's old surveyor case. Brass instruments gleamed under lamplight beside yellow deeds. If this suburban dictator wanted war, she had chosen the wrong opponent. I found what I needed in the original 1987 land records. My family had never granted any easement. The gravel road was entirely private, built, maintained, and owned by 3 generations of Brennans. Every vehicle that crossed it for the past 4 years had been trespassing. My old Army buddy Jake Morrison, now a property rights attorney in Helena, confirmed it within the hour. Bulletproof, Marcus. You could block access tomorrow, and they couldn't do a thing. But I'd learned strategy in uniform. Sometimes, the best move is letting your enemy believe they're winning while you prepare the decisive strike. I offered Delilah a generous solution first, a formal easement for $1 per year, plus a mutual respect clause requiring HOA consultation before any changes affecting my land. It would legalize their usage and end the conflict. The meeting took place in the community center that always smelled of industrial carpet cleaner and stale coffee. I laid out copies of the deeds and my proposal. Delilah scoffed, called it extortion, accused me of manufacturing a crisis for greed. According to her logic, for years of use had magically created community rights that overrode actual law. She rallied the board against the hostile neighbor threatening their welfare with technicalities. The meeting ended with her promising consequences for obstructing community progress. 2 days later, surveillance cameras appeared, motion activated, pointed directly at my property. She began photographing my truck, my gate, even my trash cans. The constant click of shutters became the new soundtrack of my weekends. While researching her camera permits, I discovered something far more interesting. Delilah had been selling Pine View homes with explicit promises of guaranteed highway access via well-maintained community roads. 3 properties sold in the past year alone, all at premium prices justified by infrastructure she had no legal right to promise. Material misrepresentation. In my Army days, I'd investigated housing fraud cases near bases. Agents lost licenses for exactly this. The irony was perfect. I started my own documentation, trail cameras capturing every vehicle from the development crossing my land, license plates, timestamps, frequency. School buses, pizza deliveries, commuters. Evidence of organized trespassing. Desperation makes people stupid. Delilah's next move proved it. A thick certified letter arrived from Crawford Mitchell and Associates, the most expensive downtown firm money could buy. 40 pages of legal theater demanding I grant permanent public access or face eminent domain. Pure bluff. But it told me she had convinced the board to burn their entire budget on her personal vendetta. While she spent, I hunted public records. One buyer had already filed a complaint with the State Real Estate Commission about misrepresented access. Delilah's listings featured my road captioned as community infrastructure. I filed my own detailed complaint the same afternoon. The state takes fraud seriously. Her panic accelerated. A community petition appeared on every doorstep, emotional manipulation disguised as solidarity. Door-to-door visits armed with talking points about how my obstructionist behavior threatened emergency access and property values. She cast herself as the hero protecting innocent families from a bitter veteran. I made my first public countermove. Obvious professional trail cameras along the road with reflective warning signs. The psychological effect was immediate. Every commute now carried a visual reminder that they were crossing private property without permission. Within days, 3 families knocked on my door asking quiet questions about easements and boundaries. Word spread. Instead of retreating, Delilah went nuclear. She hired a private investigator to dig into my military service, finances, and family history. The PI quit after 4 days. There wasn't much scandal in the life of a retired engineer who builds furniture, pays taxes, and keeps his lawn mowed. Then she tried to bribe a county inspector to manufacture code violations on my property. The inspector reported it immediately. Attempted bribery of a public official carries up to 5 years in state prison. That evening on my porch, listening to the creek tumble over smooth stones while pine scent filled the air, I realized she was no longer fighting me. She was fighting reality. And reality always wins. Saturday, September 15th, 6:47 a.m. Diesel engines rumbled down my private road like thunder. 3 cement trucks. 6 workers in hard hats. Delilah orchestrating the operation like a general pouring the Berlin Wall. The day before, an emergency HOA meeting had voted 4-0 to install temporary protective barriers around the security threat posed by my cameras. The retired paralegal who might have asked questions had been conveniently left off the notification list. I stepped outside, phone recording, the acrid smell of wet concrete mixing with diesel exhaust and Delilah's cloying perfume. When she saw me, she called out with mock sweetness, "Good morning, Marcus. Just temporary safety measures while we sort out your attitude problem." I asked the foreman about permits. He glanced nervously at Delilah. "HOA maintenance doesn't require individual permits, sweetie." I thanked each worker, slipped them 20s for coffee, and made 3 calls. County Building Inspector Jake Morrison, my insurance adjuster. Then the fatal flaw revealed itself. The barriers didn't just block my gate. They blocked the only road out for 47 houses. At 7:30 a.m. Mrs. Patterson stared at the 14 inches of clearance on each side of her Civic. The school bus arrived at 7:45, air brakes hissing in confusion. By 8 o'clock the parking lot resembled a stranded commuter camp, honking horns, delivery trucks backing up, one furious UPS driver demanding to know what idiot had built a fort across the road. I pulled up a lawn chair, cracked a cold beer and watched. Emergency vehicles arrived quickly. Fire marshal, county inspector, sheriff's deputy. Delilah tried explaining. Temporary safety measures. Reality was already crashing down. While she argued, I retreated to the workshop. In grandfather's surveyor case, beneath decades of paperwork, I found the 1987 Developer Agreement. Section 14, subsection C. If the emergency access easement was obstructed for more than 72 hours, the developer, and all successors, would pay $10,000 per day to the landowner until restored. The clause had transferred to me with the deed. Jake's reaction was immediate. "Thermonuclear, Marcus. They've been in breach since Saturday morning. 30,000 and climbing." I checked HOA finances through public records. Total assets, $40,000. They'd be bankrupt before the weekend. Their bylaws included personal liability clauses for board members who voted for financially damaging actions. Delilah had just voted herself, and 3 others, into personal bankruptcy. I carried copies outside in a manila folder. Conversations died as I approached the crowd. "Delilah," I said quietly, "you've been in breach for 78 hours. Current penalty, $78,000. Your HOA assets might cover 40 if you liquidate everything." Her smile vanished. For the first time in 6 months, she had nothing to say. That afternoon, I filed formal demand for payment. 7 days to respond before collection began. While she panicked, I built the trap. A solar-powered LED countdown sign went up on the main road. Days HOA has violated emergency access. Penalties owed, $70,000 and counting. Motion sensors and infrared cameras turned her concrete monument into a monitored crime scene. Eleanor Martinez, the retired paralegal, became my ally. She arrived with folders full of research. Board members who exceed authority are personally liable. No insurance coverage for intentional interference. Delilah had voided their protection. 23 families quietly formed a coalition demanding resolution before pride bankrupted them all. Media interest grew. Channel 8 interviewed me. Trail camera footage showed hundreds of daily trespasses. Federal emergency access violations piled up. Delayed ambulances, blocked mail, rerouted school buses. 9 days in, penalties hit $90,000. Assets, $43,000. Delilah's final descent was swift. She created fake social media accounts smearing me as an unstable veteran holding children hostage. The writing style was unmistakable. Then she attempted to bribe Inspector Rodriguez on body camera. $5,000 cash for manufactured violations. Thursday evening live interview outside her house. Confronted with evidence, she melted down on air. Sometimes you have to break a few rules to protect innocent families. Live confession of criminal intent. The story went national. Monday, October 2nd, 9 a.m. 200 people filled the elementary school gymnasium. Cameras rolled. County officials waited with violation reports and arrest warrants. Fire Marshal Rodriguez presented 47 documented delays of emergency response. Fines already $55,000 and rising. Federal authorities investigating criminal endangerment. Delilah stood, voice shaking, claiming government overreach. I rose. The offer I made 6 months ago still stands. $1 per year for easement rights. Or pay what your pride has cost this community. Everything. Current total, $137,000. Sheriff's Deputy Morgan stepped forward. Handcuffs clicked. The barriers came down that afternoon. 3 months later the concrete was gone. Delilah faced 5 years in federal prison. Her real estate license was revoked. Her house sold at auction for 30 cents on the dollar. The HOA paid me $137,000 in penalties plus $23,000 in legal costs through emergency assessments, roughly $3,400 per household. 3 properties went into foreclosure. I used the money to establish a property rights scholarship at Montana State. The first recipient was Eleanor's granddaughter. Eleanor was elected HOA president unanimously. Meetings became transparent. Boards now require legal review and community approval for access decisions. Pine View became a model for responsible governance. My weekends returned to woodworking. Cedar shavings replaced the scent of legal documents. The gate stays open most weekends now. Neighbors stop by for coffee, stories, or to learn basic woodworking. The road that caused so much pain became the symbol of cooperation when I signed the easement for the original $1 per year, plus an annual Good Neighbor barbecue clause. Last summer 60 families gathered, sharing dishes and laughter until midnight. Children played on equipment I built. Adults talked about everything except lawsuits. The Montana HOA Accountability Act passed soon after, requiring liability insurance, annual audits, and personal responsibility for overreach. 3 other states followed. The ripple continues. A young Army veteran called last month asking for advice on his own HOA dispute. I walked him through the research, documentation, and patience that defeat bullies far better than anger ever could. Bullies only win when good people don't know their rights. Do your homework. Document everything. Let mathematics handle the rest. And if you survived your own HOA nightmare, know you're not alone. The iron gate still stands exactly as grandfather built it, rusted, protective, and now, finally welcomed.